In the silent depths of Europe's golden courts, behind velvet curtains and perfumed halls, there existed a secret no chronicle dared record. While the world admired their jewels and gowns, royal women became subjects of experiments, not in politics or etiquette, but in medicine. Some accounts whisper of bloodletting gone wrong, others of strange elixirs tested on queens, and of surgeons whose loyalty belonged not to their patients, but to power. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden truths history tried to bury, consider hitting that like button and comment below to tell us where you're listening from, because tonight, we open the chamber doors that history locked tight. In the candlelit corridors of the Louvre, where shadows flickered over frescoed ceilings, a queen's curiosity turned dangerous. Catherine de Medici, the Italian-born Queen of France, was known not only for her political cunning, but for her fascination with alchemy and forbidden medicine. While courtiers whispered prayers, Catherine spent nights surrounded by glass vials and apothecaries, her silken hands stirring tinctures said to blend science, superstition, and sin. According to the records of her court apothecary, René le Florentin, the queen sponsored secret trials, testing chemical contraceptives and pain relief elixirs on her own ladies-in-waiting. The women believed they were helping advance medicine for noble mothers, yet many suffered in silence, their bodies trembling from unknown substances. Some chroniclers even whisper that a few miscarriages within the royal circle were not of natural cause, but of mixtures too strong, too new, prepared in those perfumed chambers where Catherine's alchemical curiosity ruled stronger than compassion. Whether fact or rumour, storytellers claim she sought control over the mysteries of life and birth, determined to master what nature denied her. But behind the golden doors of her palace, that pursuit blurred the line between queen and experimenter, between healer and destroyer. In the glittering halls of Versailles, where every gesture was choreographed for spectacle, even childbirth became a performance of power. Courtiers gathered outside the queen's chambers as if awaiting a royal decree, listening for cries that would announce both pain and triumph. But what the public celebrated as divine motherhood hid a truth no tapestry ever depicted. Behind the velvet curtains, the air was heavy with incense and blood. Male surgeons and midwives, eager to please their royal patrons, turned the queen's labour into an experiment. They tested chloroform vapours, opium tinctures, and iron tonics, all unproven and often dangerous, on women whose only choice was obedience. In his writings from 1668, the physician Dr. François Morisseau described what he called controlled bleeding and uterine compression, procedures meant to hasten birth. But between the lines, one senses the quiet terror of women used as living instruments for medical ambition. The chandeliers outside blazed in celebration, yet within the birthing chamber, the queen's pale hands clutched the sheets, her body becoming both a throne and a battlefield. No one dared speak of the screams once the child was born, for at Versailles, even suffering had to look graceful. In the mirrored corridors of the Hofburg Palace, where portraits of emperors watched in silence, Empress Elisabeth of Austria, known to the world as Sisi, waged war against her own reflection. To her people, she was a living icon of grace, the fairy queen of Europe. But within her private chambers, beauty became a punishment. She weighed her food grain by grain, fasted for days, and measured her waist obsessively, as if thinness could redeem a soul suffocated by crown and court. Her diaries speak of an endless pursuit of rejuvenation. Under the supervision of Dr. Skoda and Dr. Weiderhofer, she submitted to experimental treatments, injections of cow blood, elixirs brewed from rare metals, and electric stimulants meant to revitalize the nerves. The Empress endured them all in silence, her pale face untouched by expression. Witnesses recalled that she would sit perfectly still as the syringe entered her arm, eyes distant as though watching from far away. Modern historian Brigitte Hamann called her rituals a form of royal self-experimentation born of loneliness. Perhaps that is what they truly were, an empress turning science into a mirror, searching for youth not in her body, but in the fragments of control it offered. For Sisi, pain was proof of existence. And in that cruel arithmetic, every wound felt like victory. In Victorian England, madness became a matter of fashion. A woman who wept too often, questioned too loudly, or refused her husband's will could find herself labelled with a single word: hysteria. And once that word appeared in a doctor's script, her fate was sealed behind iron gates and padded walls. Among the ivy-covered estates of Sussex and London stood Ticehurst House and the infamous Bethlem Hospital, names that shimmered with respectability, yet concealed the quiet suffering of noble blood. Behind their brick facades, duchesses, countesses, and royal cousins were kept under therapeutic observation. The physicians called it science, but the treatments they administered were experiments in control. Cold baths, isolation, and electric currents were said to restore calm, though the calm they achieved was often little more than exhaustion. In medical reports from the British Medical Journal, 1872, one finds the phrase electric calming therapy, an early echo of what would later be known as electroshock. Some entries even refer to royal cases, their identities erased under medical discretion. Imagine the silence of those corridors at night, the hum of the generator, the faint metallic crackle before a scream. Curtains drawn, attendants waiting, a physician taking notes as another noblewoman twitched beneath invisible lightning. Outside, the empire celebrated progress and reason. But within those walls, progress meant pain, and reason belonged to those who held the keys. At Versailles, even medicine shimmered with vanity. Beneath gilded ceilings and perfumed salons, Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotin, remembered today for inventing a device of swift death, once sought to conquer life itself through chemistry. Before the guillotine became his legacy, he was a physician in search of perfection. In those final years of the Bourbon court, he and other royal doctors experimented with mercurial and arsenic compounds, promising beauty, vitality, and eternal youth. The official records call the subjects volunteer courtiers, but within palace walls, volunteering was often another word for obligation. The mixtures gleamed like liquid silver in crystal bottle, their vapors sharp as perfume. Ladies dabbed them on their skin or swallowed them from golden spoons, believing the pain that followed was proof of purity. But chroniclers whispered of strange illnesses spreading through the queen's inner circle, women growing pale, trembling, their hair thinning beneath jeweled combs. Some treatments were quietly discontinued, their outcomes described in medical notes as unpredictable. To the court, these were merely passing ailments, blamed on nerves or melancholy. Yet behind the marble corridors of Versailles, poison had become fashion, and even science bowed to the tyranny of beauty. The irony is cruel. The man who promised to perfect the body would later design the machine that ended it. In the frozen quiet of Tsarskoye Selo, the palace of the Romanovs gleamed like a crystal tomb. Inside its walls, Empress Alexandra Feodorovna lived not as a queen, but as a mother imprisoned by fear. Her only son, the young Tsarevich Alexei, carried the curse of hemophilia, a disease that turned even the smallest bruise into a mortal threat. Every fall, every nosebleed, was a silent war between life and death. The empire held its breath for a child who could not bleed. Before the mystic Rasputin entered her life, Alexandra placed her faith in science, in the white-coated men who promised salvation through medicine. But those promises came at a cost. Behind locked doors, imperial physicians began secret experiments, transfusing animal blood into the boy's veins, administering unsterilized serums, and testing new chemical coagulants. They believed themselves pioneers of modern treatment. The Empress, desperate, allowed it all. The Tsarskoye Selo medical files of 1906 mention experimental trials described clinically, as though the trembling of a child's body were merely a note in the margin of progress. Servants recalled nights when lamps burned until dawn, the Empress kneeling beside Alexei's bed, praying between the steady clinks of glass and metal. Outside, the snow fell in silence, covering the palace like a shroud. To the world, she was the most powerful woman in Russia. But in those sleepless rooms, Alexandra was simply a mother, helpless before both God and science. In the drawing rooms of Victorian England and Belle Époque France, the cure for sadness was stillness. Doctors called it the rest cure, a method born from the theories of Dr. Weir Mitchell, who claimed that the troubled mind of a woman could be healed through obedience and isolation. For royal and noble women, it became a sentence disguised as treatment. They were forbidden to write, to paint, to walk freely. Meals were served in excess, cream, beef, milk, until the body grew heavy and the spirit thin. Curtains were drawn. Letters went unanswered. Every act of individuality was reclassified as illness. The same ritual spread across Europe, replicated in palaces and private clinics. In 1871, Princess Louise, the daughter of Queen Victoria, was whispered to have endured such a regimen, confined for melancholia after her defiance of court expectation. Her rooms were said to remain dim, her mirrors covered, her visitors denied. The physicians called it recovery. But behind those quiet doors, something else unfolded, a slow erasure. Each day of forced rest stole a little more will, a little more self, until the patient resembled what society desired most, a woman too calm to resist. The tragedy of the rest cure was not in its cruelty, but in its conviction, the belief that a woman's silence could be mistaken for peace. In every royal court, beauty was not merely admired, it was demanded. Alchemists and court physicians competed to craft the perfect illusion. eternal youth in a bottle, radiance distilled from poison. They called their creations elixirs of rejuvenation, mixtures of lead, mercury, and arsenic, blended with rose oil and powdered pearl. The most famous of these belonged to Queen Elizabeth I, whose pale face became the very symbol of majesty. Her secret was Venetian ceruse, a white foundation made from lead carbonate, applied daily in thick layers that masked every flaw and sealed every pore. Under candlelight, her skin glowed like porcelain, but beneath that beauty the poison worked in silence. Her teeth blackened, her hair thinned, and her body grew frail. Chronic pain, trembling hands, and the fainting spells that haunted her final years, all the quiet legacy of her painted crown. Centuries later, other queens and duchesses followed the same rituals, guided by doctors who called it cosmetic science. Tonics containing mercury promised vitality. Arsenic wafers were prescribed for radiant complexions, and every prescription came with reassurance that suffering was merely the cost of perfection. In the golden mirrors of their chambers, they saw youth staring back, but behind their eyes, the body whispered the truth, that beauty was killing them softly. One ritual at a time, in the shadowed corridors of royal medicine, silence was law. The physicians who served crowns did not keep records. They curated fictions. Reports of failed experiments vanished from archives, replaced by phrases like treatment discontinued or patient relocated. Servants and attendants were bound by oaths of secrecy, their words as tightly sealed as the palace gate. To speak of what happened behind those curtains was to risk exile, or worse, and yet fragments of truth escaped. In Lady Mary Wortley Montagu's letters and the private journals of Dr. John Radcliffe, whispers appear, couched in polite language, masked as medical innovations. A new serum, tested, a lady's constitution weakened by procedure, a favourable result achieved in the Queen's ward. Between those lines lies the evidence of what history refused to name, a hidden network of royal experiments, preserved not in official archives, but in the trembling ink of those who dared to write and feared to be read. The legacy of these royal experiments did not vanish. It evolved into modern medicine. Techniques born in secret chambers became the foundations of gynecology, anesthesia, and obstetrics. What began as whispered trials on queens and courtiers would later be celebrated as scientific progress. But beneath every discovery lay a hidden truth, that the line between healing and harm blurred when power demanded obedience. The women who endured these tests were not volunteers. They were subjects of empire, their pain written off as duty, their silence mistaken for consent. History rarely remembers them. Because in the language of the court, a queen could never be a victim, only a symbol of grace, untouched by suffering. Yet behind every gilded portrait lies the same question echoing through centuries. How many cures were built on the bodies of the voiceless? In palaces where chandeliers glittered above silken gowns, there were also chambers where screams were muffled by protocol. These women, draped in jewels yet denied control over their own bodies, became unwilling pioneers of medicine. Whether fact or legend, storytellers claim their suffering gave birth to the science that now saves lives, though history seldom speaks their names. If this story moved you, subscribe for more untold truths of our past, and tell us in the comments, which royal story should we uncover next?